life, your term show.
We are live with the one and only, my go-to cybersecurity expert, Anton Livaja. And Anton, you're coming at us live from Croatia. From your homeland, which I didn't realize you were actually born and semi-raised there and then coming to Canada. Do you want to just say,
yes.
So you came here on a diplomatic mission to Canada?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now you put me on the spot. Yeah. So I grew up in Zagreb and I was here until I turned 13. And then in 2003, we moved over to Canada and kind of stayed. But most of my family still is here, and, including my mom. I'm at her place right now. And yeah, so this is the original home. And now Canada was the second home, and I've recently emigrated Canada. And this is just a little stopover, but my destination is the Cayman Islands. So,
wow. So have you actually arranged anything in the Cayman Islands yet? Like a place to live or residency? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. We actually went to visit, and it's a beautiful place. That was my first time there just recently. And it's a very small place. It's only 75,000 people total. And it's about, I think it's 160 kilometers squared is the whole surface area of the territory. There's 3 islands. The Grand Cayman is the main island where basically everyone lives. But it's a very cool spot. I haven't secured a place yet, but it's fairly easy to find the spot because there are quite a few people coming on and off the island. About 80% of people that live there are migrants or foreigners, and 20% are kind of native Caymanians. So yeah, it's a very interesting place. A lot of very cool and interesting people there, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of events happening. When I was there, it was during the Bitcoin Pizza Day. So I was just hanging out in a pool and met some random people there. It was like a few families there with their kids. And one of the guys told me that there was a Bitcoin Pizza meetup happening that evening. And so that's how I ended up going to a local event. And there are a lot of Bitcoiners there, a lot of tech entrepreneurs, a lot of kind of like finance people, other crypto kind of projects. So it's a very cool kind of, what would you call it? Like very lively place. There's a lot of people, looking to meet and network. And so, yeah, pretty excited about it.
So what made you pick Cayman of all places?
So I have a few friends who established companies there, and so I just had some connections that helped kind of, steer me in that direction. But as soon as I started learning about it, it seemed like a very good option because it's very close to the rest of North America. It's only a 4-hour flight from Toronto. So it's pretty easy to get to Miami. It's like 1 hour. So from that perspective, it's great. It's also closer to the West Coast zone. So it's only 2 hours ahead of the West Coast, which is helpful for me because I work with quite a few companies and my co-founder is based in San Francisco. So that works out quite well. And of course, beautiful weather. It's a really nice place most of the year. There is a hurricane season that's during the summer. So it can get A, very hot, B, there's something like 20 hurricanes a season in that area. Not all of them hit the Cayman Islands, but when they do, they can be pretty intense. So that's one of the downsides. But other than that, most of the year, it's just beautiful sunny weather and you can just go for a swim every day. And it's very tropical. So a lot of nice fish to see. You can go diving and look at corals and that sort of thing. So for anyone that likes kind of water sports and that sort of thing, it's ideal. And it's kind of easy to get around. But of course, the tax regime there is amazing, aka there's no tax. It's a 0% tax jurisdiction. So from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense as well. And it is very expensive to live there. So if you actually go and move there, cost of renting is very high, cost of food is very high because everything's flown into the island. So what you don't pay for in taxes, you kind of pay for in goods. But at least there's a lot of, high quality things available. And so you kind of get what you pay for there. And so, yeah, those are some of the reasons. And yeah, the interesting thing is that I didn't realize, I thought it would be more of like, whenever I say it to people, they're either like, wow, that's amazing, or wow, like that's a tax haven. What are you doing there? That's so sketchy. But it turns out it's actually, they've really clamped down on that sort of thing. And so it's no longer really considered a gray zone. And they take their AML and KYC extremely seriously. It's actually very, very difficult to open a bank account there. So it's not really, if you're really looking to do that sort of thing of like, sneaking around tax, there are other places that make it a lot easier. Caymans are no longer really a place to do that. So, well, in short, yeah, I guess these are the reasons. Yeah.
The international reputation is a bunch of rich guys live there that are paying extremely low taxes, or you hear about all the shell companies that are registered there for tax evasion, I guess, right? So exactly. You say they're clamping down on it. Like, what's it like there? Is there a lot of wealth on the island? A lot of wealthy people there? You said 80% are migrants, and I imagine it takes some wealth to make it over there and then to continue living there with the cost of living as high as it is.
For sure. Yeah. It's very, very highly concentrated in terms of wealth. And Cayman Islands actually are the 5th biggest buyer of US treasuries in the world. So that tells you something in terms of, it's 75,000 people and they're one of the biggest buyers of US treasuries. That's like a, heuristic that says a lot. But it's also interesting because you don't really see the wealth that much. It's kind of understated, and people are, it's wealth. It's not just being like, oh, we're rich and we're flaunting it around. It's like serious money. But everyone's, there's maybe a few Ferraris on the whole island and like one Bentley, and then everyone else is driving like kind of like, maybe a nice Mercedes or something, but it's a bit understated. For the amount of money that really is there, it's quite understated. I believe BlackRock has it's either the head office or one of their big offices based there as well. So,
of course,
they're kind of big. So, but it definitely draws a lot of money, and yeah, it is expensive to live there, which is kind of a filter. And yeah, it's not just like, you do pay quite a bit. You do pay quite a bit to live comfortably there. So it's, do you want to pay income tax, or do you want to pay like sales tax or cost of goods? And I'd much rather pay like cost of goods. So
is there still a sales tax there? And is that how they earn all of their revenue pretty much, is from the sales tax?
Yeah, there's a sales tax. They also have, the special economic zone, which is the way that I was able to set up my company. So this company that I set up there, it's called Caution. And it's, you're not able to do business with Cayman individuals or organizations. So you can only do business with companies outside of the Cayman. So that's one of the rules, but they make it fairly easy to go and set up certain types of companies. If it's like the company I set up is more about IT. If you're trying to set up a financial company, they make it a lot harder. But for IT and tech companies, they kind of want more of this type of company. So they're trying to make it easier. And so they have quite a nice process of, figuring out if you're a good fit, and then onboarding you. And so as part of that, I rented an office there. And then I was able to go and establish a company and basically get a work visa for 5 years. And so now I'll be able to move there on this visa and rent out a spot and kind of make that my main base. So they made it relatively easy to actually do this, but there are some costs, of course, around, this like office space and then some legal fees. And so they make some money that way as well. And it's such a small place and so much wealth there that I'm sure there's a lot of just like treasury and assets that they invest as a country as well. So I'm still discovering and learning. That's, I'm a freshly minted Caymanian, but I'm very excited to be one.
So not an actual citizen though yet?
No, just on a work visa. To become a citizen, it actually takes like 10 years. And the interesting thing is you get a UK visa passport, but so they don't have their own passport. But you're not a British citizen. You're a Cayman citizen, and so you can vote in the Cayman Islands. And it takes a while. They made it fairly difficult. You have to be living there at least 6 months a year for, I think it's 10 years to become a citizen or something like that. I might be off by a few years, but it's basically around that.
Okay. So when you and I first met, it was in 2022 at the Miami Bitcoin conference. And at that time, you were the head of cybersecurity or head of security for Ledn.io, which is a Bitcoin financial services company, lending, financing, collateralized Bitcoin loans. And so a company that needed some serious security, let's just say that. And then since then, it seems like you've potentially worked for another company or two, but you've branched out onto your own thing. So what are you doing now, and how are you able to kind of launch your company and now open up these options for you in life where you're able to do something like move to the Cayman, right?
Yeah. Good question. So I was at Ledn, and actually a cool development with Ledn recently is they went Bitcoin only. And they're still around and doing really well. So kudos to them, and keep up the good work. There's a lot of lender kind of competition coming to the market now, but Ledn is kind of the OGs. So we'll see. It's good to have competition in the market and to kind of motivate everyone to do better. But yeah, I after that, I worked at Open Zeppelin for a bit as a lead of a blockchain security team where we did a lot of smart contract audits. And then I shifted to working on Distrust.co. Distrust is basically a security consultancy, and we've helped secure basically hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value across the systems that we've worked on. So my co-founder, Lance, used to be the head of security at BitGo, and he's helped build Unit 410, which was another custody/vaulting system that got acquired by Coinbase, as well as Turnkey.io. So this is kind of like where the hardcore security angle came from. And then I started working with him and learning about, what he was doing at these custodians. And then together we started auditing other custody systems. And when you're trying to defend, billions of dollars in value, it changes the way you look at security. All of a sudden, all the attacks are on the table, and there's no such thing as like going too far. It makes sense to spend literally millions and going as deep as you can and down every nook that you can think of. So we basically built a business around, what we learned from dealing with this type of company organization, and then the methods we learned. And then we ended up developing a lot of open source tooling because we couldn't find the tooling for what we wanted to kind of implement as defense mechanisms. And now what we're doing is we're taking some of this open source tooling and we're going to create products. And that's what Caution.co is for. That's the Cayman's company that's going to be for launching some managed products. So we're basically two companies, Distrust and Caution. And the reason they're called this is because, the names are kind of security focused, but Benjamin Franklin once said that the parents of security are Distrust and Caution. So we're the parents of security.
I love it. Wow.
Yeah, it's been cool. I definitely the administrative side of running a business are not the thing I'm more that interested in, but I am interested in it in the sense that it will help us create more security solutions and protect more people by extension. If it was up to me, I'd love to spend most of my days just, working on difficult security problems and not paying attention to the rest of the world. But unfortunately, what I realized is that selling is kind of the key here. Even if you're just interested in improving the bottom line of people's security and not literally trying to sell a thing to make money, you still need to sell. You need to tell a good story to get people's interest so that you can convince them that they should be doing something differently or spending energy on something. But yeah, so setting up the company in the Caymans made sense because we want Distrust to be more of like a open source focused organization that just develops software. We built a Linux distribution. We built some custom operating systems for doing things offline in an air-gapped environment, as well as for secure enclaves. And we can get into that a little bit at some point if you want. But yeah, the idea is that Caution is more of like the generate income managed solution and service provider, and Distrust is more of a nonprofit kind of open source focused organization down the road. Although right now distrust.co is the thing that does the audits and consulting and all that stuff. So
wow. So dude, you're doing what a lot of people want to do, especially in Canada, which is leave Canada and run your own business, ideally online, because it frees you up from, to live anywhere, right? Maybe you're happy with Canada, but you just want to experience living in different places around the world. So like, how are you able to acquire customers and create income streams and continue getting new customers? Like how do you market yourself as a cybersecurity expert? How are you mentioned sales obviously is important in any business. So like, how have you actually been able to do this logistically?
Yeah, it's really challenging, especially for me, because I'm not, super interested in that, but I've tried to convince myself that it's a type of, almost like social engineering. I'm trying to socially engineer people into paying attention to what I'm doing. But the thing that I realized kind of at the beginning of this year is that we weren't telling a very good story about what we do at our company. So the first thing I did was look at the website and just make sure that can I make a website that at least my friends, when they visit, can figure out kind of what I do? Because it occurred to me that most of my friends don't even understand what I really do. It's like, oh, he works on the internet and does things with computers, cool, security guy, whatever. So I spent a lot of time just looking at our website and trying to figure out, okay, how can I tell a story on the website that, will, for a random person that lands on the page, can actually figure out what we do and then how we can actually help them. And so that's what really only beginning of this year, I really started thinking about this hard and spent, since the beginning of year to now, improving things. And then the second thing I thought was, hey, we have all this kind of knowledge that we're selling. Most of our business is based on kind of security knowledge that we have that we use to help organizations. So how can I take this knowledge and put it down in some format that I can share and kind of share it with people so they can benefit from it, let people know what I know about so that I can help them. So we started a blog. So that was kind of the second part of the website to beef it up a bit more and tell an even bigger story. So we only have one blog up right now, but I just wrote a second one literally yesterday that will go up. And so I think what we're going to focus on, I don't really like this idea of ad spend and putting money into pay-per-click ads and doing all that, like that type of advertising. Although that can work for some products, I find that for our business, what I'm really interested in is sharing the knowledge and writing about topics that are kind of like evergreen. I write something once and it'll be good. It'll be relevant for the next, at least a few years, but ideally 5 to 10 years, maybe forever if we do a good job. But build up that organic SEO, being, helpful on specific topics when you want to go and learn about deterministic builds or full source bootstrapping or some of these topics that are not, as widely available and people are not as familiar with, be the source of information and the source of where people go to kind of explain this type of thing. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it right now. And the other thing is podcasts are really helpful. I've been actually on a few recently, which was cool. When I went to the Cayman, someone saw that I was doing a workshop and then they were like, hey, can we do like a news article about you and Cayman Independent? And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, sure. Let's do that. And then someone else saw that and was like, oh, can we do a podcast? And so we did a podcast and then ended up on a panel. So it seems a lot of the marketing sales things that have happened to us so far have been very much like circumstantial and kind of word of mouth or like just right place at the right time, but partially because we're trying to get involved. Whenever I get an opportunity to go and do something, I'll go do it, even if it's a workshop to like 2 or 3 people or whatever. If it's just a tiny thing, I'll go and do it. And sometimes it snowballs into more opportunities. So for me, it doesn't really matter if it's a room of like 100, 1,000, or like 2 people or just one person, because I'm just as excited to explain things to one person as I am to a whole crowd. But I think for me, it's just like sharing valuable information or knowledge that I feel like would benefit others. And that's the angle I'm working right now.
So far, the customers you have been able to acquire have primarily been through word of mouth or referral based, I guess?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, largely. I've had a few kind of, I'll share it because it's kind of funny, but like a sneaky thing I've done a few times that has actually worked out quite well, where people reached out to me to ask me about becoming a head of security at their company. And I won't say no, I'll say yes, even though like I'm not going to abandon distrust and caution. Like these are my babies that I'm going to work on. But through conversation, I kind of converted them into a distrust client. So, nice. so I'll do that sometimes. But yeah, a lot of our work comes from referrals because the people that we do work with are very happy with our approach. And it's a little bit different the way we threat model. You know, we have our threat model on our website and people look at it and like, wow, this is very different, but it makes sense. And so, yeah, they will recommend us to their, peers in their industry or someone that they come across and like, hey, have you like talked to these distrust guys? And so every so often we get some clients, and we recently added smart contract auditing as a service we do. So that's kind of resulted in an influx of people who needed that type of work. So it's slowly scaling, but yeah, it's not bad. It's just not as predictable as like when you have a good sales pipeline. Let's say it's we don't want to do pay-per-click, but if it was a pay-per-click pipeline where I know if I put in $1,000, I'm going to get like one client, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'll slam a bunch of money into it when I need clients and they'll just come in. Here it's like, okay, we got to do some sales now to try to find a new client, or like, do you know someone who knows someone? And I really don't like doing that, but when it's a tiny business, you got to do all of the things. So I wear all the hats right now.
Yeah. Interesting.
Hey everyone, before we dive back into the podcast, I've got a quick shout out about the Your Life, Your Terms report. This is Tom's weekly newsletter where he and Nick share real stories, experiences, and powerful insights to help you live life on your terms. Each week, Tom breaks down the economy, real estate, macro trends, and Bitcoin, and gives you actionable steps to make these insights work for you. No fluff, no vague predictions, just a clear path to thriving no matter what's going on in the world. Tens of thousands of Canadians are already getting the real information they need to level up their lives every week. I can honestly say it's the only newsletter that I've stayed subscribed to for years. It delivers real value that keeps me coming back for more. Join us and start getting the insights and tools to create the life you want, plus entertaining and inspiring stories from Tom and Nick along the way. Sign up for free at rockstarinnercircle.com/get started and start living life on your terms. That's rockstarinnercircle.com/get started. Your first step to living life on your terms.
So I imagine with everything you know about security, and if you're securing billions of dollars on these different projects of yours from other people, I imagine you would also know how to access potentially billions of dollars from things that aren't as secured. So I imagine with your skill set, it really comes down to the person at the individual level, and if they're a good actor or a bad actor, I guess, in how you use your skills, for good or for evil. So, I mean, I'm guessing that would be true. Like you would have the ability to be a bad actor or a bad hacker. So it's just very interesting to me that you have those skills, but you choose to be the good guy in all this and actually protect people from those bad actors with the same skill set.
Yeah, it is very much the way you just described it. It's really about your intention and belief system, your value system, because the skills are very, very much the same. Of course, if you spend more time trying to, do a specific type of attack, you might be a little bit more practiced at it than someone who's, on the other side defending. But at the end of the day, it is very much like how deep your understanding of these systems is, and then you can either use it for the good or attack. And I get a lot of pleasure from helping defend people. I like being on the side of defending, and it's us versus them, but it's us, the good guys versus the bad guys, and I want to see how many people I can protect. That's kind of one of my drivers. It's like protect as many people as possible, protect their privacy, freedom, and improve their security. And definitely, we joke about this, our colleagues and us and friends. If we were on the wrong side, it would be a really big problem. It would be really bad because we have a lot of ideas on if I was to attack. Right now, I'd probably spend most of my time doing supply chain attacks. Probably on like software supply chains, because they're really poorly secured. I was kind of writing a little rant LinkedIn post about it today, but there are just so many holes there that if someone that was motivated and not well-intentioned spent a reasonable amount of time on this, there would be a really, really bad outcome. And we can see that there's constantly attacks that are happening. And the NPM ecosystem, for example, that's the package manager for JavaScript. There's a few of them, but NPM is the most widely used one, or PyPI, that's the Python package manager. Literally every week, there's some news about widely used package compromised. Millions of users installed literal malware on their computer through this package. And I'm actually honestly surprised it's not worse than it is right now, because the state of affairs is pretty bad.
What are the purpose of these attacks? Like somebody doing an attack like that to install malware on people's devices, malicious software, right? What is the purpose of that? Is that more of a nation state attack? Is that a competing company attacking another company?
Well, it really depends on what you're going after, but you can more or less do anything that the user can do on their computer through these supply chain attacks. For example, with NPM, most developers, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, it's unclear to me, where the gap is, but I think it's just lack of understanding that when you do NPM install and you add a package, that package can have scripts around it that manage its installation lifecycle. And so those scripts actually run what's called as users. So whatever privileges you have as a user in your computer, that script has those same privileges. So it can just run arbitrary code. If you haven't read that code and you run npm install, it could literally be installing malware on your machine. Now, what it does, it could do essentially whatever you can think of. It could install malware on your machine that's spyware, that just observes what you're doing and sends information home. Or it looks for private keys in specific directories, locations on your computer, and sends those home. Or it goes and changes the behavior of, let's say a piece of software that creates Bitcoin wallets, and it messes with the entropy. I actually wrote a proof of concept software that does this. It intercepts calls to the operating system that retrieve entropy and replaces them with whatever you like. So you go and you try to generate a Bitcoin wallet, and out you get not a random key, but one that I inserted, basically. So you can do all of this through NPM attacks. And there's this misconception that somehow NPM packages can't do this type of thing and that they're isolated somehow because they're an NPM package, but they're really not. So that's a huge issue. And that's actually what the blog is that I wrote about yesterday, in part. This lack of understanding that this can happen. On the other side, so this was about installing packages, but if you go and use it in your code, so you import a function from this library of functions that are available in the package, and often you'll think, oh, I just imported just this function, so that's all I get here, so I don't have to worry about malicious code that's hiding in the background. But the problem is that function could actually be calling a lot of other functions. And if someone goes and modifies one of those calls, they could completely change the flow of that software or do something in addition to what it's meant to do. And, like steal information from your computer or any number of other things, right? And it gets worse because you install this package often, they'll have a lot of sub packages, sub dependencies. So you install one thing, but behind it is like 1,000 things that aren't. It's literally like taking like just the black box of, you have no idea what's in it, and just like putting it in your living room and like pressing a button on it and being like, cool, let's just see what happens, like.
So I could get some malware on my computer, and let's say I have Sparrow Wallet downloaded on my computer, and I go to generate a new Bitcoin address, and it'll generate one with low entropy that they're monitoring that, and they'll swipe the funds as soon as the funds.
Yeah. Exactly. There'll be an example of the attack. And we actually found, it was me and a bunch of friends, we found the Milk Sad vulnerability, which was basically this, where a wallet, it was the Lib Bitcoin wallet, it used low entropy. And so we were able to brute force like all keys in that space. I think we already talked about this in the past, but yeah, exactly like that. So there's many different ways to, basically whatever you can think of is possible. And even though a lot of these attacks initially they run as user, the scripts are on user level, privilege escalation where you increase the access permissions that you have is very easy. Sometimes it's as easy as creating an alias that is what you invoke when you try to do like a super user command, like sudo. You create a copy of that command. So when the user runs it next time, you are able to actually go and run your command instead. It sends you their password and then runs their command, whatever they meant to do. And they wouldn't even know. It's like fully, transparent.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So how does somebody protect themselves against something like this? Is it, generated on a cold card, do the dice rolls?
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you're defending, but isolation is very important. Hardware wallet is a great form of isolation because it's a separate piece of hardware that's meant just for managing the private keys for signing things. Yeah. If you have applications that can't run on a hardware wallet, then you can isolate them inside of a virtual machine, or you could buy a separate computer and do it. And this is kind of like the thing I bring up a lot. It's very simple and kind of primitive control, but if you have something that's super important, just isolate it as much as you can. Imagine you have some sort of like, let's say you have an application that you log into and it can launch nuclear missiles. Or, hopefully that doesn't exist, but if it did, you would have a computer where the only thing you do is you go and log into that site and that's it, nothing else, literally nothing else. And that would minimize the surface area for attacks, because visiting a website, for example, can be enough to get compromised. So like in your browser, you have the V8 JavaScript engine, and it's very complex and very large. And so even though they constantly fix the flaws, because of the surface area and the complexity, the attackers keep finding new flaws, new holes. And some of them are zero-day exploits that allow you to escape out of the sandbox of the browser. And so you can reach from the sandbox of the browser, which is not really a sandbox, into the host operating system. And so you visit a site and boom, you haven't even, interacted with it, and you could be compromised. This is real. Like, this actually happens, and it's not like a crazy hypothetical. We get at least a few 0 days of this sort a year with the major browsers like Chrome or Firefox or whatever. It's kind of unavoidable. So a lot of people actually disable JavaScript for this reason. If they're doing something really sensitive on a system and they want to make sure this is not an attack vector, they'll literally disable JavaScript in their browser. Of course, a lot of sites then don't work. So there's always a bit of a trade-off.
I feel like the average person, and I include myself in that, but even myself compared to the average person, since speaking with you and upping my own cybersecurity, like I'm already way ahead of the average person, and don't even know what the hell I'm doing. So it's like the average person is so unprepared for this world.
Yeah, totally. I think that's why a lot of the responsibility is on the companies that build these technologies to make them kind of foolproof, which is very hard to do. But we're not even doing the things that we could do, right? Like if you take a lot of software that could be secured from, malware by just reviewing all the dependencies. We just talked about like how like packages can introduce vulnerabilities, and like companies could protect their users by reviewing all the code that they're putting in their software, but they don't, because it takes time and energy and costs money. And so, even like the kind of obvious basic things, or using the specific type of authentication mechanisms like WebAuthn or FIDO2, it's the best thing we have, yet most companies still don't support it. It's kind of, so that's like, we haven't even done the part that like the non-technical users that should be doing it, so that's kind of unfortunate, but that's a part of what I'm trying to like also do with my work, like help educate the tech people also on like how they can protect their users and change some of these kind of, the Spider-Man meme where Spider-Mans are pointing at each other.
Yeah.
We have a bit of that in the tech industry, because everyone just goes and looks around. It's like, well, no one else is reviewing all of their dependencies. Like, why would I do that? It's like, because it makes sense to do it. Because if you don't, you could literally be installing malware on your systems, and then both you and your clients are going to get pwned. Like, you don't want that. but it's this enchanted circle of like, best practices, and the best practices aren't really best. They're kind of, mediocre at best.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like, I use several different banks, and like, I feel like at least two of the banks, it's still like SMS to a two-factor authentication. And it's like, installing a passkey service doesn't seem like it would be that difficult, but it would greatly protect their clients from a SIM swap attack, which seems like one of the most common things that could happen. And it's like, why are they not rolling this out? These are banks we're talking about. This is probably the most important thing that you could secure.
It's a great point. Yeah, a really, really great point. I mean, they do have their fraud budgets and things like that, and behavioral monitoring, et cetera. But there's no good reason to not add this layer that you just mentioned, right? It's objectively a more superior a method to protect your clients, especially with something like passkey that integrates into existing password managers and such. Yeah. You can't really, in good faith, make the argument anymore that, it's too complicated, whatever. It's like, well, it's not. And of course, you should offer it, even if it is too complicated. Give the option to the user that is more, tech savvy or interested in improving their security. Give them that option. Don't just like throw them out with the rest of like, people that don't care about security.
Yeah. Do you think the average person is going to have to learn this stuff? Like, the attacks will get worse, or scams will get worse, and then the average person is really going to have to educate themselves about this stuff?
It seems to be the trend. I'm not sure if I'm just like, I still haven't figured out if it's just that my friends are being influenced by me, so they're showing more interest in security, or if it's a general trend. But I've definitely had a lot of my friends ask to have like sessions with me to talk about security and improve their personal security. So it's very hard for me to say. I think I'm in a like, that might be the bubble.
That might be the that you just have on people, because you're talking about this stuff and you're like, oh my God, I feel like naked. I need
That's usually the effect.
As soon as I talked to you for like 10 minutes, I felt naked. I'm like, I am so exposed. I'm like, I don't even want to tell this guy how friggin' exposed I am, because I just met him, but like, I am so exposed. I need to
we're all kind of
like running home and putting clothes on.
Yeah. We're all just rocking like loincloths, and it's like -40 out.
That was the feeling I got. So maybe it's a bit of that. But I when I told my parents about, a bunch of the stuff that I started doing, like they both perked up and got super interested, because just in Brampton, where they live, like phone scams, text message scams are just rampant right now, right?
Really?
So many, just phone calls constantly. My grandpa almost got scammed over the phone pretty badly once. They knew a lot of info. Like, they called and had said that my cousin got a DUI and was embarrassed to call his parents and needed to be bailed out of jail. And so he was going to go get some money, I think, at a Western Union and bail them out. He was like 95. And to be honest, it was my cousin that could definitely be, like a real thing. So I don't know if they knew that or not, but it was just weird. They knew the cousin's name, the family's name. So I don't know how they got all that info, but it's like, data is leaking, data is out there, and people want to protect themselves.
Yeah, for sure. It's scary. I'm still kind of I've seen more people now realize how big of a risk deepfakes are. I've been on that train for like years now, but now finally people are like, oh my God, you can generate like audio that sounds like someone. Like, yeah, you've been able to do that for a long time. Now it's just much easier. Same with video. So I'm still kind of like bracing for like, I think it's going to get a lot worse, because I always talk about this, the recovery mechanisms for different services often rely on, photographs or video of someone. But what good is that if you can just generate all that stuff like on the fly? So
you need a safe word now. You got to talk to family, come up with a safe word.
Right.
If you're ever in doubt, you ask for the safe word, right?
Yeah. And it's a pattern that's, we've kind of have this pattern already with Apple, for example. Apple has this key that you need that's used for client-side encryption. So they actually can't get at your data. The only way they can get at your data is if you give them this like phrase that's like a super long like string of characters. And if you lose it, your data is lost. Yes. And so this user experience exists, but you can use this for other services too. You could say like, okay, you activate this mode and you can only recover your account if you provide this like secret phrase. And like, I want that. I would turn that on,
Yeah.
But what if the user gets locked out? Well, then that user shouldn't use that service, but I would like to.
Yeah. So you got to take responsibility.
You would like to, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Like there's comes a point where it's like, you can only do so much for the end user, but also you shouldn't throw out like the users that want to protect themselves more with the ones that like don't care or aren't capable enough to.
Yeah.
It's like, give the option.
How paranoid should people be about like storing personal information in Google Drive or a Microsoft OneDrive, these online cloud drive services? I don't know, keeping financial information, passwords, stuff like that in like a Google Doc. Like, how concerned should people be about that? Is Google actively scrubbing through all that data and reading your information?
It's hard to say. I mean, as far as I know, they've had several cases where they were taken to court over mishandling personal information and information from their clients. So I don't trust third parties at all. There's also, Google is a like interesting example, but there's 23andMe recently, the company that was taking people's like, I think it was like cheek swabs or something, and then they would do DNA analysis and all that. Their entire company and all the data just got purchased by some other random company. And so that's something that can happen down the road where like, even if you trust the current owners of the company and the data, it might end up in someone else's hands down the road. But in terms of Google Drive and storing your data in places like that, I just don't do that, because even if you trust that Google is impenetrable, an impenetrable fortress, which it isn't, you are not an impenetrable fortress. So if you have Google Drive, let's say, synced to your computer, and your computer gets compromised, all that data could just be taken out of your drive. Or if it's on your phone and you have access to it on your phone, the way phones are secured is really bad. And so let's say you have an Android phone and you install some application, all the applications that run on the phone share the same kernel. So if one of these applications has a vulnerability in it, it could actually go and reach into other applications in memory and figure out what's going on. So it's very easy for data to leak out. If you really care about protecting it, keep it offline or keep it encrypted with an additional layer of encryption like PGP, which is impractical for most people. So it's probably easiest to just not put it on the, like, ask yourself the question, do I really need it to be available all the time? If you do, then maybe it makes sense to have it up. If not, just like add some friction, and then your attacker will have way more friction. Every little bit of friction that you add, your attacker is going to be, drowning in the amount of obstacles that you've added for them. It's like, okay, well, I put all my information on a drive that's sitting on my shelf here. Well, now the attacker has to find you physically and like go and like, maybe beat you with a wrench or whatever. which is much less likely than them compromising you via a library in someone's software.
Okay. So anything personal that you wouldn't want anyone seeing, don't even risk it. Put it on like a separate hard drive that's disconnected and offline, and you just plug it in when you need to access it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like an email, for example, you might have like T4s with your social insurance number, or like tax forms for those who are not Canadians. Or, a picture of your passport that you sent somewhere for some reason. All this stuff, you can just go back and clean up and delete, right? So that, if it happens that your email gets compromised, that information is just not available, right? So it's about minimizing data exposure as much as you can. And other than that, it's pretty, pretty tricky to, if you're doing everything on one computer and you use no isolation, odds are your computer will be exposed at some point to something. So even if you just, have stuff saved on your computer and you think, okay, it's just on my computer, I'm not putting it anywhere sketchy. If you're doing a lot of things with that computer, like installing different applications, doing a lot of browsing, opening PDFs, right? All of these things increase the likelihood that you will eventually inadvertently install malware on your computer. Now, the nature of the malware, we don't know. It might be just adware. It might be something that's, trying to steal XRP from you, and none of our viewers have XRP, so they're safe. But
some might, I don't know.
Some might, I don't know. But yeah.
Might be some XRP army on here.
Yeah. Oh, now I'm in trouble. But yeah. The point is more like, if you want something to be like secure, you need to isolate it. So Cubes OS is a bit of a, Cubes OS is like the operating system that I use that makes it easy to create isolated environments. And for anyone that, has anything of value that they want to protect, I would recommend setting up Cubes, because it seems like it's a very difficult and complex thing to do, but the amount of protection it gives you for how relatively simple it is compared to a lot of other things that you could be doing in terms of security. It's literally like, hey, use a separate computer for things that are important to you. If you're managing crypto, that's here in this computer. If you are accessing banking, it's in this computer. If you're accessing whatever, it's in this computer. But you don't want to have like many physical computers. So boom, Cubes OS is like one computer that allows you to have many little computers inside of it that are separate. And if you care enough to protect your data, if you have sensitive data like cryptographic keys or access to exchanges, or banking, or you really care about your pictures and you don't want them to leak to anyone, then Cubes OS is one of these like almost like magical solutions.
So can you download that on any type of computer, like on a Mac? Can I download
there
Cubes
is
OS?
No, unfortunately you can't, but well, you can download it, but you can't run it on Mac hardware. It has a somewhat picky preference for hardware, but there is a hardware compatibility chart that you can look at. And it basically allows you to create virtual machines that run Linux. You can also, I believe, run Windows. I haven't tried that yet, but I think you can run Windows in a cube as well. Cubes, they call their virtual machines cubes. So you could have a cube that runs Windows, and you could have a cube that runs Linux, and you can run several different types of Linux. But yeah, it's a little bit definitely a learning curve, and it's not for everyone, but especially for people that are dealing with digital assets, and especially if they have a larger sum and they're logging into exchanges and maybe using browser extensions with wallets and stuff, this would be a worthwhile thing to learn and would drastically improve their security. Or for developers.
Yeah, totally. What about things like Start9, like a sovereign computing system? I'm just starting to learn about Start9, for example.
Is it like the self-hosted server that runs your own service?
Yeah. So you can run your own node from it, but you can do a bunch of other things like your own drive system, where you can store things in a drive, access it like you would, I guess, like a Google Drive, but it's through your own server to protect privacy and security.
So huge. I'm a huge fan of that. At Distrust, we actually only use open source software. Everything we do, we self-host and run ourselves because we just don't want to trust anyone else. Hence the name Distrust.
No kidding.
Yeah, but the thing with those is that you need to make sure that you're configuring them correctly and setting up your infrastructure correctly so that you don't like leave doors open. One of the more common ways that people get compromised is they just misconfigure stuff. So definitely big proponent of using open source stuff and self-hosting. But it needs to be, I don't know much about this company that you just mentioned. So if I was to use it, I would go and do like a thorough review of how they do everything. And then if I was satisfied, I would go, great, which is not something you can do with most products that are not open source. You just blindly trust that, this company is doing all the things because they're a real company with a proprietary product. But behind most real companies, there's like a high degree of, you could even call it negligence when it comes to doing things properly and securing because no one can see because it's hidden.
Yeah.
With open source software, you can verify for yourself. So that's a big thing. Like something we talk about a lot is like, if you can't verify it for yourself, it's not secure. It's not worthwhile using. And that's a bit of a, maybe some people might think an extreme position, but I think it's a logical position. And Bitcoiners get it because they're like, you got to verify. You always got to verify.
Yeah.
And that extends to security too. You can't just blindly trust that something is the case. Unless you can prove it, unless you can read the code yourself or cryptographically prove something, it's not, it's not usable, at least for us.
Yeah. Well, I definitely believe your experience there, especially with like behind the curtain companies being negligible. Like, every company that you ever go into on the surface looks like it has it all together, right? And in the background, there's always fires to put out and this to happen and people being negligent here and not taking care of this. So it's like, why would that be any different with the security inside of these companies, right?
Yeah. There's like, it's a hilarious pattern that we see with, for example, proprietary firewalls. And everyone's like, oh, proprietary firewall, Fortinet, Cisco, whatever, amazing. Like they have such a good team. They're such a great company. And then they constantly have flaws in their software. And the problem is no one can go review their software externally because it's not open source. And so what's going on, guys? Like I thought you were these, amazing proprietary solutions that are just so secure, yet you're getting constantly pwned. Where's the, disconnect? So yeah, this belief of like, there's like, they show you the front and in the back, everything's on fire and falling apart and, but the beautiful facade remains intact.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the takeaway for me is when I have the option to go with the open source software. So if I'm buying a Bitcoin wallet, choose the open source Bitcoin wallet.
Oh yeah, for sure. Wallets are a great example. There's like a Phantom wallet or something like that that's proprietary, and I can't believe that people actually use that. Like I would never use a wallet that's closed source.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, you have to actually review the code. Just because it's open source, it doesn't really, mean it's secure. But it means that you have the option of verifying the software for yourself. And more than that, like philosophically, I believe that open source software is the way to go. And like with the proliferation of AI, finally, we're at a point where like it makes less and less sense to try to hold your software hostage because some bro is going to vibe code your application over the weekend. And so, good luck with your, proprietary blah, blah. I just recreated it, with chatting to an AI over the weekend. Not to like, make it seem like there's no value in products. But open source, I think, is just like this force that helps move humanity forward. And imagine if everything was open source, we'd be so much farther along because we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every time we try to build something. We'd have so much more progress along so many different vectors. So that's why we do everything open source. Literally, like even the new products that we're going to launch are going to be fully open source. You could just go and like clone our product and launch it if you like to. It's like no big deal.
Yeah, it's like scarcity thinking, right? Like to protect your intellectual property, to patent an idea when it's
I laugh when people are like, oh, I have like 20 patents. I'm like, oh, I feel sorry for you that you're like in that mind state of like, hunting down patents, or like, you know, it reminds me of like people that buy domains and then sit on them and try to sell them to people. It's like, you guys are like it's such a rent seeking, like waste of space and time.
Yeah. I guess it is. That domains, I guess, are like what, digital real estate, right?
Yeah. I mean, I bought like, you know, caution.co like 20 years ago, and I'm waiting for some sucker to buy it. And like, I actually reached out to try to, caution.com. I tried to buy it, and I tried to buy distress.com, and they're like, I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was like, I'm not going to spend that on a domain. I got the CEO.
Yeah. Limited web space. That was a big land grab for sure.
Yeah. And the .coms. Wow. Yeah. Whoever has like, I wonder who did the best with that sort of thing, where they bought up all the common words. They're like word.
Saylor, like, Michael Saylor.
Was it?
Saylor Saylor. He's made tens of millions.
He's doing the same thing with Bitcoin. He's buying all the Bitcoin. He's going to sell it back to people.
Exactly. Yeah, he bought Michael.com, Hope.com, Alarm.com, Strategy.com, all of these words in the early 1990s. Brilliant. He realized, there's going to be some demand for these positive, connotation English words, and here he is today, right? Yeah. What got you into all this stuff? Like cybersecurity in general, maybe Bitcoin later on. Like, how did you get into all this stuff?
Yeah, it was a mix of a bunch of things, but my mom introduced me to computers very early on. I have like a picture of me sitting in front of a computer at like 3 years old. I think it was an Atari or a Commodore. And then my uncle was in kind of like IT and such. But then, I had a lot of annoying work that I didn't want to do. And I started automating it. And that's the thing that really got me into programming. So that was one of my the things that pushed me to learn more about how to program. And that was one of the main drivers there. And in general, I just always thought hacking was very interesting and cool. It was like, saw a few movies like Hackers and Swordfish, and, always like whenever there was a scene with some guy doing some cool stuff on a computer, I was like, ooh, that's very nice. And then somehow, I ended up becoming a hacker without realizing it. But the thing that really, really pushed me to go deeper on security and get really serious about it was when I started working for Vitalik's dad, which was back in like 2015 or 2016. And when I learned about, blockchains for real, because I kind of knew about Bitcoin, but I hadn't really studied blockchains. But when I started studying them and realized that, wait, there's this cryptographic key that can actually move money around, that was the aha moment. That was like, oh, okay, I have to learn cryptography for real and understand how these things work on a low level. That really gave me a tangible reason to go and study this further. And I met the right people. I got introduced to this person and that person. They introduced me to the right topics. And eventually I met Lance at a conference in San Francisco where he was on a panel with head of security at, I think it was Kraken and Coinbase, and he was the head of security at BitGo at the time. And I heard him speak about security, and I was like, wow, this guy has a really good approach. That's very different than what I usually hear. And he gave me a sticker to his hackerspace called Hashbang and said, hey, come hang out in the hackerspace. And so that was like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 5, I don't remember exactly, but I joined the hackerspace, and that's how we became friends. And then eventually we ended up working together, and now we're co-founders. But he was also a big kind of push deeper into Linux engineering, like low-level operating system engineering, and like remote attestation and reproducible builds and all this like pretty hardcore low-level stuff. So he was definitely a big influence on me as well.
How do these institutional Bitcoin custody operations work? Like BitGo, like Coinbase, Fidelity, like what are they basically doing to custody Bitcoin safely?
Well, it really varies in terms of the approaches. Some like Anchorage really focus a lot on monitoring, and in my opinion, that's not really a great approach, but most of them have a combination of different approaches, and it's, they might leverage hardware security modules like HSMs. to manage their private keys in like an offline environment. And then they might have, in some cases, online systems that are used for signing, as well as like a secondary system. And then they have basically policies that they put in front of their vaults where they say, okay, a user has to go and call one of our representatives and show their ID and introduce themselves and say what amount they're trying to send where. And only then, if they do that, and also in the UI, they submitted a request for movement of funds, then we will go and take the transaction and sign it in a combination of these like offline vaults that are powered by HSMs, or maybe part of the signing is happening in like some sort of a online system that's isolated. And on a high level, basically, that's how some of these systems work. Some of them, like Fireblocks, rely on multi-party computation, where they have multiple parties. Kind of basically, the way it works is you can imagine a box being passed around, and like I put something in the box and I give it to you, and you can't look inside of the box, but you can add your information into it, and then we add it to the third person, and then they shake it, and out comes a signed transaction. And so we didn't expose any of our personal cryptographic material to each other, but at the end, we ended up with a signed transaction. So some systems will rely on this type of cryptography. Some will do more multi-signature, where you have different keys in different settings. One is offline, one is maybe in a user's application, like a phone application, and one is in yet another location, and they all have to sign, or maybe two of the three have to sign the transaction to make it valid. So these are kind of high-level patterns that are used. But unfortunately, basically no custodians reach a level 4 in our threat model. We have like 4 different levels. Most of them, even the most advanced ones, maybe hit level 2. A lot of them are level 1, which means they're exposed to a lot of risks, for example, in the supply chains, or they might use a binary that's kind of the backbone of their system that is not fully transparent and verifiable. They might argue, well, that's a hard angle to exploit, but it is. But like you could make it not exploitable, so why not do that? But yeah, that's on a high level kind of how they do it. And there's a variety of, some custodians will use Windows for parts of their system. Some rely more on Linux. Some will have Macs as a part of their fleet. And then, some will use specific types of like cryptographic libraries, and the way they add those to their system will vary. But yeah, maybe you have like more specific questions I can tell you about.
No, just was generally wondering about it, right? You hear all the caution, I would say, about Bitcoin treasury companies, the honeypot that they are, and then the custodial risk of entrusting a third party to custody the Bitcoin. And you would assume that they have some institutional level grade custody, but I've always wondered, well, is that 2 guys that, 3 guys that have a 2 or 3 multi-sig, and they've got something kind of worked out there? Like, of course they've thought this stuff through, but it's just always been a curiosity of mine, really.
That's the thing. I honestly believe that these systems should be fully open and verifiable, or it's bullshit, right? Because exactly for the reason we spoke about earlier, if you're just putting up this facade and just showing me your SOC report, look, we did a SOC report. I don't care about your SOC report. A SOC report, it's basic like table stakes. It's good that you have it, but let's talk about real security. Let's talk about how you actually went as far as you can to ensure that there are no holes left in your system. And most companies don't do that, because the average person, you show them the SOC report and you tell them you've hired a PhD in cryptography, and they go, wow, okay, your system must be amazing. And the truth is that most systems aren't that amazing, and they're full of holes. And as long as, there's not a accountability, because they don't have to show how it actually works, they have no real good reason to go and update things. So we're actually putting a lot of pressure right now on a lot of these custodians, because we work with clients that have a lot of wealth that they basically said, we're not comfortable keeping on your platform unless you go and do some work on plugging these holes that we know you have. So that's actually been a very interesting outcome of working with specific organizations.
Yeah, interesting. Well, your decision to move to Cayman, obviously lifestyle was part of that. Taxes might be part of that. The network that you're going to have down there is probably part of that. Do you think you'll return to Canada one day?
Honestly, I don't think so. I look at Canada. I've started looking at countries kind of as businesses or organizations, and I would not invest in Canada right now. Just like in terms of how it's performing, it's not a business I would put my money in, and so those that have followed the growth of Canada in terms of population versus GDP and kind of what the leadership is doing, I think all agree that it's not looking great. So you never know. I'm never going to say never, but at this rate, and from what I know right now, the odds that I return to Canada are very low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair. Yeah, telling it like it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a lot. It would take a lot to turn the country around. I don't think it's impossible, but it would take some radical leadership and changes that I just don't think the current leadership has the balls to do. So,
is your position also kind of like the sovereign individual thesis? Like you're going to go where you're treated best at this point because you have the ability to do so with a remote income and now with remote capital that you can move with you?
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of how I think now, and trying to spread my risk across multiple jurisdictions, because if one of them decides to do something that I don't align with, I want to have an exit plan. So I no longer feel comfortable just being kind of like a cattle for a specific nation. And I feel that it's also, I want to be able to realize the vision that I have in terms of what I want to build and the effect I want to have on the world. And Canada is just not helping me get there. So I'm going to go wherever I can catalyze and kind of self-actualize and achieve all the things I want to achieve. And if I feel that the place I'm in is not really conducive to that, then that's another good reason to not stay there. So The Sovereign Individual was definitely a very inspiring book, very interesting, very prescient in a lot of ways. I think it can be polarizing. It might make a lot of people mad, but I don't know. I'm starting to think of thinking about the country risk as almost a type of IQ test, where it's like Bitcoin's an IQ test, and now we have a place of residence as IQ test. And to be fair, place of residence is a lot harder to change, and not everyone is able to go and do that as easily. But I think there are also a lot of people that could do it that aren't doing it for, not the wrong reasons. So,
yeah. What do you think is polarizing about the sovereign individual thesis? Just the fact that people wrap up their identities with their current nation state and are loyal to their nation state?
Yeah, I think there's this nationalist/socialist kind of thinking person that would say, well, that's, you're just a authoritarian technocrat, fascist, whatever, elitist person that, doesn't care about the common folk. Like that would, if I imagine myself being on the other side, I'd be like, that's maybe the kind of the rough argument that would come into my head, but I'm not that person, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I feel like freedom is something to optimize for, and I don't think Canada's really optimizing for that. I mean, they've added a lot of exit taxes, which is basically like, okay, we're going to tax the shit out of you and then also make it much harder to leave. Okay. That's that doesn't feel right, but
it's not a good sign.
No. Yeah, but they're not the only country that's doing that, right? To be fair, and the states are, in a lot of ways, worse, because even if you're not residing there, you're still always paying federal tax. So that's an even more extreme version of the tax business. But
It's true. Yeah. 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 I mean, it is weird. Like some of these smaller countries are optimizing for freedom of their citizens more. And you can see freedom-oriented people becomes, more and more attracted to these places, wanting to leave other places where they might feel more oppressed because it's not being optimized for freedom. It's being optimized for, I don't know, the state objective, or collective, I don't know, collective ideas or ideology or something. I don't know what, but control, really.
Yeah. Control is a big part. And I think the little countries are more agile and they're able to change their setups more easily. And I think the bigger countries are overestimating their value and what they're providing. And I predict there will be a rapid shift and people realizing that they're not getting a good deal and fleeing to greener pastures, so to say. Maybe I'm like, biased a little bit now that I've, read The Sovereign Individual and this idea is kind of embedded in my head, but it makes a lot of sense, at least on the surface. So
it does seem to be playing out. Like you take an ambitious, young, productive person like yourself, starting a business, generating revenue, not relying on the state, relying on yourself, your own income, your own hard work. And now that tax revenue, less and less of it is going to be in Canada now because of the way that you feel like you were treated there, right? Versus where you feel like you might be treated better elsewhere. So you're going to remove yourself. And now we miss out on all that tax revenue and the employment opportunities that might come through your companies and the entrepreneurial vibe and energy that you're going to bring to the country. Now that's going to be gone, right? So it's like if you chase too many of those productive people out of your country, what do you have left? You have the unproductive people left.
That's it. That's the whole brain drain theory, right? So it does seem to be playing out. Hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where Canada is going, to be honest. It's very interesting to observe, especially as now I'm an outsider, because I feel just kind of, liberated.
Well, it's been good catching up, man. Where can people find out more about what you're up to, what you're doing, follow along with your blog, any insights you have?
Yeah. Well, you can always hop on my website, which is Anton, Anton, Livaja, Livaja.com. And I kind of post links from all over the place there that I find. I sometimes write blogs or I appear on other podcasts. And then distrust.co is our current active project where, if you need an audit or if you want us to look at your systems, you can send us a message there. And caution.co is just a waiting list right now, but that's something that's coming soon that will be pretty cool. So you can check that out too and sign up for the waiting list. Cool, dude. I always appreciate the time and I always learn so much from you. So thank you. I love talking with you. Yeah, I hope we can meet up again and chat and, next time maybe from the Cayman Islands and I'll have more stuff to fill you in on. Hey, dude, that'd be awesome. Even better if I could meet you there. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to have you down there. That would be cool, man. All right. Thanks, Anton. See ya, Anthony.